Hello, this is Becca from Willow Hill Designs, and today I'm sharing the finishing of my bag for Roxy's Journal of Stitchery Volume 5, and this is a satchel type bag that I've decided to design, and the fabric that I've chosen is fabric from my stash. I generally, for any of these slow stitch projects, I use fabric from my stash. Excuse me, and the fabric was very nature inspired, which is what I wanted, and I decided to add some little pieces to it just to give it sort of even a vintage look also, along with nature inspired. I didn't want to do patches all over and maybe canvas stitching, just because there was a lot of real estate here to stitch. This is quite a big project, so I thought that I would do mostly embroidery, which of course turned out to be a lot of hours put into it as well. But, pardon me, allergy season, my magnolia is blooming away and the other flowers, so excuse me for that. And these pieces that I applied to the front flap of the bag, I explained in part 2, and I will link that in the description box below. These patches that I added and these pieces of doilies and this little rock. And the stitching on this entire bag is pretty much simple stitching. It's, let's see, satin stitch, running stitch, outline stitch, V-stitch, French knots, easy for me to say. Just basically basic stitching, nothing too fancy, but I felt like it just brought the fabric to life and gave it some raised detail. So I will try to show you a close-up of that, of the stitching and the little patches that I added to this front flap here. Lots and lots and lots of French knots were done in this whole piece. I didn't count them, but I'm sure there are hundreds. But the way that I chose this front fabric for the bag was so that this little bird is looking down at this little bird as if they're talking to each other. So that's the front flap. And this is the front of the bag. And you'll mostly see just this portion here when the flap is down. But again, running stitch, outline stitch along the branches, V-stitches. And these are just some little pieces of fabric that I added here. This is a loosely woven cotton, and another cotton piece with a rose on it, and some pieces of lace that were invisibly stitched down. And this little bird was white, as I showed in part 2. These birds on here were just white and black, really no detail or color on them. So I just gave this little guy some extra personality with some other colors in him. Stitched over him with a long and short straight stitch. This little bird was just outline stitched here, and some V-stitches done on him, and again some color added. And here is a little piece of a snippet that I purchased from Chrissy Crosser. She's on YouTube, and her Etsy shop is Chrissy's Addict, and I love her little snippet pieces. I think they're beautiful. This one says, "Discover Your Wings," which I just think really adds so much to this piece because of the little birds on it. And then there's this little bird that is stitched that I think is adorable. And this one was just gray and white on the fabric, and I added a little bit of color to him, just keeping in along with the theme of the fabric or the coloration of it, but just adding a little bit of color. The leaves are satin stitched in some cases, V-stitched, and just different little stitches. And then over here, these pieces, this is just a little piece of fabric with butterflies printed on it, and I love that, thinking butterflies, of course, are in the trees, and this little piece I was given in an order that I had gotten from Etsy, and I love this little piece. It ties in with the colors, and then a little piece of fabric with music on it, again for the birds, and another little piece of lace here. So I just added these little pieces, and again, mostly what you'll see in the front is this look. And this is the back of the bag. And again, I've added some pieces to this to give it kind of a vintage look. And actually this says vintage on here. This is another piece from Chrissy Crosser. And from her little shop, one of her snippets. And I loved it again. Tied in with these fabrics here and the colors. But I took my Ranger ink pad, my Distress Oxide ink, and I just kind of put that on a plate, put a little water on it, and then just with a paintbrush touched these edges up to make it look vintage, just to give it that old look. And then I made a little yo-yo. I almost said Suffolk puff. I'm getting used to that word now, Suffolk puff. A little Suffolk puff or yo-yo here out of a peachy pink colored satin. I'm sorry, that's silk dupioni, and some lace that I have, and then a strip of fabric that ran along underneath this lace with, again, that same color flower showing through, and more stitching here, berries and leaves. And then over here, another piece with the word beauty on it, a little piece of fabric. And this is I believe it's a Chinese button. I used to have lots of them. Now, if you try to buy them on Etsy, they're very expensive, but I had gotten them years ago. So I put one of these little buttons. It's a ceramic button, and I love it. And just a little tiny snippet of lace here. And here's another bird that is also done with stitching. This was again all white with just a little bit of black on it, and I just added a tiny bit of color to that bird, just kind of keeping with the theme. And these owls now, they were very large, and I didn't want to stitch them like this with the long and short. I knew that that would take me quite a long time, and as it is, I've put a lot of hours of stitching into this. So for this I used lace pieces, and I just cut little snippets of lace to kind of look like wings, give the impression of wings and feathers here on the chest and on the head on the large owl, and the same thing on the small owl. There's, not sure if you can see it, but there's little pieces of lace as well on the small owl. And it was a very white, stark white lace. And what I did there was I took a paintbrush and I just tapped it in my Distress Oxide ink pad from Ranger, and I just touched the outside edges of the owl all the way around, but also the pieces of lace, just to give it, again, that kind of vintage, but also a little more dimensional, so that they stood out from the white background of the owl on the fabric. And I also went around the owl as well with that. And I did the same thing for the little bird, the little owl, around the edges of the lace and the bird with just my paintbrush, a flat bottom paintbrush, and just tapping this Oxide ink on top of the owl. And then I just did a little, with one strand of DMC floss, a little outline stitch around the eyes, the upper eyes, just to give those a little more dimension on both the little owl and the large owl, and a little bit of white thread to give that glint of light in the eyes. So I really like the effect of the lace on these little birds. I think it really looks beautiful. I'm really very happy with this, the way it's turned out. The fabric is just beautiful, and I'm very pleased. So what I will be doing next, because this is the back of the bag, so it'll be like this, and the front will go like that. Well, the flap has to be attached to the back of the bag to come over. So what I will do next is to pin, this is for those who are asking me how to construct this. And what I will do is just put some pins in here to hold this together and stitch it so that it's all one piece, and it will look like this when it's joined. Turn it this way so you can see it. So I will join that, and then I've also already joined the lining for the back of the bag and the flap, and I haven't actually stitched it, but I've just pinned it together. So that looks like this. And when these two things are sewn together, I'll put them together and then sew them and turn it right side out. And the other thing that I will do is just to put, this is the front of the bag, and I will put the front lining, lay it right sides together and sew around the edges and then turn it right side out. So I will do all of that, and I will come back when that's done. So I stitched the lining to the front of the bag and put them right sides together and then turned it right sides out. And so this front part of the bag is all lined and pressed, and I stitched this on my sewing machine just because I want this to be sturdy and strong. I'll be putting my needle book in there and some threads and slow stitch projects to carry along with me. So that is the front of the bag, and now I've stitched the two pieces of lining together, and here this is what they look like. This is for the front flap, and this is for the back of the bag. And I pressed that seam open, and I also stitched the back of the bag and the front flap together and press that seam open. And so now what I will do is just put these right sides together and stitch all the way around and leave an opening to turn this to the right side. And then I'll come back to show you the gusset. And hopefully this is helpful for anyone that wants to create something like this. I was asked to show the construction process, so I will be right back. Well, I have stitched all the way around the lining and the back of the bag and the top flap, and I left an opening here in the bottom, and I turned it right side out and pressed it. And I just stitched this little opening here closed with a kind of an invisible applique stitch. It's not the ladder stitch, but it's just a stitch that I do. I don't know how, I don't know if there's a name for it. But so the back of the bag and the top flap are done. So that'll go like that. And the front of the bag was all sewn, and I left the opening here at the top for that, and I am just stitching that closed right now. And I'll try to show you the stitch that I am using for that. Some extra thread here. Maybe I will sit down for this if you don't mind. Hope I'm not making anyone dizzy here. See if I can bring it in close for you. Let's see. Okay, hopefully that's okay. And all you want to do is really grab the needles that I'm using. This is a black gold needle, and I love them. My friend actually bought them for me for the first time, and I hadn't seen them before. It's Clover's black gold needles, and they're really beautiful. They really work nicely for little close work that you have to do. But I'll just try to show you. I'm just taking the tiniest bite on the fold of each fabric and just coming up a tiny bite on the fold of the lining, and the same for the front of the bag. This thread, for some reason, has been knotting. I don't know why. I took it off the spool in the right way. The wrap is going the right way, so I'm not sure why it's been knotting, but it has. So this really is just to close up that little opening. Hopefully I'm in shot for you. This is just to close up that little opening where I turned the two pieces. Trying to keep this in frame and see what I'm doing as well, which is not easy. Pull this a little tighter. And I'm almost to the end here. I stitched up to the corners with the machine, so those were all turned with my I use a bone folder for that, to poke out the little points so I don't make a hole in anything. And it works nicely. Hopefully I'm still in shot here. So I'm just taking, if you can see, the tiniest little bite on the fold of each fabric, and we're right here to the end. And I used the color to match the bag itself, not the lining, but if you take the stitches on the fold, you really don't see it. You won't see it so much on the lining. So that is all closed up and done. I'll just make a couple of little knots here. See if I can grab this. And I'll just bring it out. Oh, my poor little needle, it's trying to go through all of these layers here. Okay, I'll just snip that. Okay. So that opening is now closed. So each piece, I'm just going to bring you back up again. Hopefully I won't make anyone dizzy. Okay, that's the edge of my sewing table there. Oop, there, sorry. So now that all of the pieces are sewn together and lined, they're all lined. So the front will go like this on the bag, and the flap will come over. And there's my saddle bag. So then the last thing to do is to put this gusset on, and of course the gusset is lined as well. And this I'm going to stitch on, I'm thinking with a, wish I had a pearl cotton in this color, but I don't. So I'm probably going to use DMC, maybe 2 or 3 strands of that, and just do almost like you see on leather work, just kind of an overcast stitch all the way around. So this will go in here like this. This gusset will fit in here, and that will go all the way around the bag. So it will look like that, and I will come back when I have a good part of that done. I have to go get dinner right now. So I will match these two sides up. I'll start in the front here, and I will go all the way around the front. And when that is attached, I will attach the back side of the gusset to the back of the bag. So I'm guessing I will pin, I've never done this, so I'm guessing I will pin this like this and do that whip stitch around to enclose it all in and keep it all secure. So again, I will take care of that, and I'll be back when it's just about entirely put together. I can see I have to press that a little bit more so that lining doesn't show. But I'll be back when the gusset is just about finished. Okay, well, I'm back with my bag and it is finished. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I've not tried a bag like this before, so this was really fun. And here it is. Here are the gussets sewn, the gusset sewn in, one gusset. And it's quite a big bag. Let's see, it measures about 10.5 by 12. So it's a good sized bag. And I was going to show the stitching of the gusset on, but I thought it's pretty much self-explanatory, just a whip stitch going around. And I found this color, pearl cotton, and it's a dark gray, which really went nicely with the bag. It kind of blended in. And you can see the whip stitches on here that just go all the way around. And same thing on the back. And I did the stitches fairly close together so that nothing would come through. I think with the batting and everything, it made it nice and thick, and with the small stitches, there's really no openings, no visible openings at all on the side. And when I did the gusset, I had made it a little bit narrower at the top and then let it come out a little bit wider, flared as it went down, because I didn't want a big gaping opening up here at the top. I wanted that to be a little bit narrower, and then it goes wider. And I did make my gusset bigger than I needed to. So what I did was I pinned it, and when I went around, I noticed that it was a little bit too long. So I pinned both sides and came around, and what I did was at the middle, I took a little seam here and I put that on the bottom, because if it was all one width all the way around, I would have just cut it off at the top. But because it was narrower at the top, I put the seam at the bottom, but it seems to be unnoticeable. And I didn't want any kind of a closure. I just want it to flap over like a saddlebag or a satchel. And I put this, I don't know what that is. I'm guessing it's some kind of a plastic on here. And I just sewed this on for just a little bit of weight to weigh that little flap down. I don't think there'll be too much in here. But I thought I would just also share quickly on the owls. I was sharing that I had used some Ranger Distress Oxide ink, and this one is Vintage Photo. And I just took one of my paintbrushes that has the square, the chisel end, or the square end, flat end, and just really dipped into the Ranger with my brush and just went around the edges of this lace. And it just, I think, gave it such a nice dimension. So just a suggestion, because we don't always have to dip something in tea or in coffee to age it and distress it fabric. And that is a permanent ink, Oxide ink, yeah, I guess it is an ink. It's permanent, and but there shouldn't be any problem. If I do have to wash this, I will wash it by hand if anything spills on it. But as you can see, it just gives the owl a little bit of dimension there. I really love the way it kind of outlines the feathers here. So that is it. It is completed. And what I will be keeping in this bag is I was calling it a needle book, but I guess it's really more than that. It's probably my sewing book, my stitching book, because this has everything in here. Seam ripper, threader for larger threads, extra needles, tweezers, my magnets for putting needles on, thimble, scissors, extra pins and needles in here. This really has a lot. So this will be going in here. I'll be taking this when I use this bag. And that just fits in there nicely. Oh, and I should have shown, there's a little pocket also in the lining. I put a pocket in here, and I thought I would put a pad in here for notes. My friend Barbie made this and gave this to me in some Happy Mail, and I just love it. I think it's so pretty. It's just perfect for this. It goes along with that nature theme. So if I want to make notes on something or sketch something, that'll be handy, and that'll go right in the pocket here. So that sits in there nicely. And then I will put my needle book in here. And I'll probably put some Val Downey threads or some other threads, floss, and they can go. There's plenty of room in there. If you can, I don't know if you can see down in there, but there's lots of room for other things. And then the stitch project that I'm working on right now, which is following with Catherine K3N Cloth Tales. This is a weekly stitch along that we're doing, and each page has a weekly prompt similar to Roxy's Journal of Stitchery, but this is weekly. This is for the next one. This will be sewn onto this page, so this will go in here as well. And I really don't need to add anything else because everything that I need for stitching is in my needle stitch case, not my needle book, but my little stitch case that I had made out of a scarf. So it is completed, and I just love it. Really, really happy with this. It was lots and lots of work. Lots of hours of stitching went into this, but I just feel it's a treasure. It's something that I will cherish for a long time, and it'll just come in so handy. Sometimes I don't like to make things just for the sake of making them, although I do with quilts, I guess, but I just love the fact that this is useful. This is something that I can utilize, and not just to look at, which I have loads of those things that you put on shelves and look at. This, I love that I can use it. So thank you very much for joining me on this little journey, and I will see you in the next video. Wishing you many blessings. Bye for now.